Hi, I'm Joyce CREIGER, and this is ArtLink, conversations with artists, art consultants, gallery owners, designers, art lovers, and art collectors. My guest today is a painter, Russian-born, and she currently is living in Allston, Massachusetts. Say hello to Alexandra Rozenman. How are you, Alexandra?
I'm good, thank you.
Today's your birthday, huh?
Oh my God, don't talk about it.
We all have to have birthdays.
I guess so. Once a year at least.
Once a year at least. So, Alexandra, you are from Moscow. You were born in Moscow.
Yes, I was born in Moscow, Russia, and grew up there and lived there till June 26, 1989, which is when we left for America.
Why did you leave Russia?
I left Russia because my parents took me with them, basically. I was in a very funny age. I was 18 years old and really didn't want to go anywhere. I think when people are 18 years old, they just love the world around them. Maybe they hate it, but I really enjoyed Russia at that time because it was the perestroika time, everything was changing. Life all of a sudden was getting more free, more colorful. If you were in the arts or in school, it was just exciting. It was interesting. And I was an artist since I was 5 years old. This is what I did. I was painting and drawing. And I became a friend with a lot of artists who later became famous or just important artists. So I think although I was not accepted officially to any art schools, I was really growing as an artist and as a person. My parents decided that who knows what's going to happen in Russia next, since Russia has been through so many difficult episodes and our families really suffered. My parents decided to leave Russia as soon as they can. And in the middle of the 80s, when perestroika just began, people started leaving Russia again. Jews were allowed to leave the Soviet Union. So we were Jewish from both sides, and my aunt lived in Pasadena, California at that time. And so she invited us over as her relatives, and we took off and landed in LA in '89. And so the first thing I did in the States, I went to study English as a foreign language.
Which makes sense. Were you painting
Yes.
when you were in Pasadena?
Yes, the first thing my parents did, which is very nice and I still appreciate it, when we looked for a house to rent, they made sure that there was a studio space there for me. And there was a studio space, and yes, I started painting right away. And that definitely helped me not to get completely depressed.
But didn't you tell me that you escaped to New York shortly after that?
Yeah, I did. I tried to figure out what to do. I had friends who have been immigrating to America at the same time from Russia. And the most of them went to New York City. So I was in touch with them, and I figured that I should realize how to get out of California. I was very happy to understand that actually there is America different from California. Because I thought the whole America was like California. Nobody told me that it's not true. I read a lot of literature, but I never read really, I don't think I read anything contemporary enough to be sure that there is still New York and that America is still.
Now, do you have any paintings left from that period when you were in California?
Some of them are in my parents' house. I sold a lot of them. It was 1989. I was the first person in my family who made any money when we came.
Really?
This was really funny. Yeah.
How did you sell them?
My aunt just invited friends over to celebrate our, coming to the States, and 4 of them, I think, decided that a good artist is about to, become a big artist, and they just invested some money in me, which I understand now very well. This wasn't really much money for them, but this was amazing. I made
you were now
$1,000.
you're now earning money. You're living in Pasadena, And yet you decided to take off and go to Brighton Beach.
I came to New York, found a studio space on Suffolk Street. I had no heat, no water, just everything was perfect. And
The starving artist.
yeah, absolutely. I just did my best. And what actually happened is that I found a program that was connected to State University of New York then. It was called Studio Semester in New York, where people, different level artists from all over the world would apply there. And if you get accepted, you get a studio space on Suffolk Street, 107 Suffolk Street. And all your classes will be limited to group critiques, and you will be an assistant to somebody in New York or to more than one person in New York. And there you go, take off or not.
Who would you say were the three biggest influences at that point in your artwork?
At that point, that's an interesting question, because I know who they are now, but at that point, I'm not sure that there was really an artist who I considered my big influence. I consider my father or maybe my parents a big influence in my life, because although you see they do things that I really didn't want them to do, they always supported my art more than anybody's parents that I ever met. And I really appreciate it. My father wanted to be an artist. He's a very creative person, has been painting and drawing through my childhood.
Oh.
So he definitely influenced my work and taught me how to be creative. I think this was a big influence and a wonderful kind of education. And then I think that they were just, I would see art that I like, and if I liked it, I would try to understand who did this art and who was this artist and where to find more work by this artist. When I was 11, I was supposed to apply to an official art school in the Soviet Union. This is what you kind of do. It's a school which is like an after-school program, but it happens almost 4 or 5 times a week as well. And you go and you start taking academic classes, academic drawings, life drawings. You study color theory, you work very specifically, and the only style you're allowed to follow is socialist realism.
Oh.
So we're talking 70s and 80s here. So I was kicked out of this school because I wouldn't follow the instructions. So I got very upset, my parents got really upset, and then they did this magical thing that they found through their friends, because they knew a lot of dissident people and had a lot of interesting friends. But I think my father's best friend at that time was a next door neighbor to one of the dissident artists who happened to share a studio with another artist who was actually taking children like myself to somewhat educate them. Although honestly, all he was doing was just working on his own work there, for which today I don't blame him. But this is where I went to for a few years. And of course, his work, his name is Grigory Bruskin, and his work and his approach to work is a huge influence in my work and in my life. I really appreciate that I met him, and I was, I believe, 13 or 14. And I remember he gave me a biography of Van Gogh to read, and gave me a few other wonderful books, and allowed me to sit in his studio when other artists would be visiting. And that was a tremendous help and just a possibility to grow in many ways. So what I should have done, I should have kept in touch with all these wonderful artists who really liked me and loved me, but I was shy, and I was 15, and I really didn't know. I had a lot of hair, and I really didn't know what to do. So I got a little confused and just with how to handle all these wonderful people in my life. So.
But now you come from Russia, you go to California, you're now back in Boston. Mm-hmm. What influences happened when you got into Boston?
In my work.
In your work.
Well, I just forgot to answer a question about my work in Moscow, so I'll start there. So in Moscow, the last year of my life in Moscow, I learned a lot about avant-garde artists, because just about that time we had this show Black Square in the Museum of Fine Arts, and all this work that was hidden from people for quite a while was shown, and I was amazed and so intrigued by all this work and writing by Malevich and Kandinsky that I started doing work which doesn't look like their work at all.
This is the suprematists that you were?
Yeah, that's suprematists, yes. And I started doing work that if I look at it seriously now, I do see the influence of Russian Avant Guard and also Russian underground art, which had a lot to do with texts and with found object. And I did those collages, which would have cutouts of newspapers, of these communist articles, and pieces of cloth that I will go dig for, like in some Ramneys of communal apartments. That was a special body of work for me. I still have 2 pieces from it. When I came to New York, I tried to be an abstract painter. This was a good, serious try, and I really tried very hard. I think I learned that I can't be a good abstract painter, and I learned a lot about paint. And I realized that I just love paint. I love paint as a physical material, as a chemical material. I have just physical relationship with paint, but I learned that only because I tried to really do work where paint is more important than subject matter, basically. And then when I moved to Boston, I was so happy that I was out of New York, I realized. And I was at the ocean, and I realized that I need this ocean. And although I was close to Brighton Beach, I never had time to go there. But here I was at the water, and I took my old work here, and I crossed one painting, and I realized that this is my horizon line. And all these paintings worked as my underpaintings for the next
So you went
year
from,
and a
let me
half.
understand, you went from abstraction, complete abstraction,
Yep.
to all of a sudden introducing a horizon line.
It wasn't all of a sudden. It really was kind of a turnaround and a way back, but only that far back, because I really was different at that point than I was when I was 18. So, and I knew much more. So I discovered that if I add narration to my work, I can still love paint, and I can still add my characters, and I can still tell people everything I want to tell them, and keep everything I want to tell them when I paint abstract paintings.
So at this point, you became more of a narrative painter,
Yes.
more of a storyteller.
Yeah.
Talk to
Slowly.
me a little bit about perhaps one of the series that you're working on now. I know that you're working on a series about other artists where
Yes,
you are
I
appropriating.
often do that. I like working on other artists, and I think this was once upon a time my sarcastic statement about postmodern paintings. Because I got so tired of explaining to people why I paint that I thought, okay, let's look at art history and see how much has been already done in art history, and that we need it all. It's all so beautiful and so interesting and so wonderful. So I would pick up an artist and study this artist completely, their life, their art, their theory, their points of view, and do work about them or about their work. For example, I did a series in about 97, I believe, that was called Rethinking. And Rethinking was, each rethinking piece is 2 halves. One is an inside of the room, and another one is an open window. And in an open window, you see a recognizable city, usually. For instance, because there is an Eiffel Tower there, or a Twin Tower, something that you will know where you are. And then there will be a room, you will see the wall with a painting hanging on it. And so you will start thinking about the relationship of that piece of art or that art movement to this geographical location. And usually it will be very clear, like a Black Square was in Moscow, Pollock was in New York, and so on. So I really enjoyed painting this series.
So you did that series when?
Just about, I think, when I was right after I left museum school, I think.
So how many were in the series?
About 10.
And do you have any of those left?
No, they're all sold,
Really?
all of them.
Now, have you ever gone back more recently and revisited that series?
Yes. Well, just last year I worked on a series. I wasn't really planning it that clearly as the one I just talked about, but it just happened, and I really enjoyed the idea and had a lot of fun. I made the paintings that I call Transplanted. I had a personal show in Multicultural Art Center in Cambridge, And each piece, which is I think 5 feet wide, shows myself and somebody's famous painting or somebody's recognizable style or repainted pieces from other paintings or some geographical locations, and in each painting I will be moving in with a famous artist. So there is a painting where, for instance, I'm moving in with Matisse, where you can see all his wonderful green furniture packed in a big truck in the painting, and that on the left corner of the painting you can recognize one of his paintings about interior and exterior.
So was he moving his furniture out so you could move your furniture in?
Yeah, that's up to you. I think you can see both directions. I think that I'm sitting there on a horse and I'm kind of dragging all this furniture. So I think I'm going towards Matisse somehow with all his furniture. I guess I already have his furniture, so that's confusing. So one of my favorite paintings from this series is called Moving with Turner to Brooklyn. In this painting, you can see, if you know Turner's work, you may see that I'm sending a message about his famous painting that's called Steam, where you have a train, fast-moving train on a bridge. And there is a train on a bridge, and if you look close, you can see the Manhattan skyline far away from you, and you can also see the letter Q on the train. And you can see me with 2 orange suitcases facing the train, so it's actually up to you to decide which direction I'm going. It's really not clear, probably on each painting, if I'm going in or out.
So they have a sense of humor besides just being narrative.
I think they are all, I think my Rethinking series, I think I meant it to be sarcastic. But yeah, I do have a kind of a bitter, I think, Russian sense of humor, which I definitely work with. It's one of my favorite art materials. And maybe that's one of the reasons a lot of people can take my art serious. But I think that humor is it's a great tool. And I like Jewish humor, so I like making jokes about food. I'm kind of coming up with an idea of I made a lot of paintings about cooking too. And I also teach a class that's called soup painting, where we take a soup recipe and we replace each food with painting medium. And we have to come up with an abstract painting that looks just like the soup from the top when it's cooked. And it's a great class, and it's absolutely amazing exercise. You learn everything about art materials that you can possibly can. Now I teach 6 days a week, about 2 or 3 classes a day, and I also offer special workshops for children and their parents. And I often something that's called workshops for couples, which is honestly my best bread and butter, because people take it as a family therapy, I think. And if it works for them, they save a lot of money. So, and I love teaching. And
so you're telling me they work out their issues on the
canvas?
I
think that's how. I think that one out of the 2 who buys this workshop may have this in the back of their mind. That's why
doing
I have a lot of
something together, right?
And I love doing it because this is not so much about art. This is actually about human relationship, and I see so many happy people. Like when you live a normal life, and maybe you're married, maybe you're not, but you just have a normal life. How often do you think about happiness, and how often do you think that people can actually be happy together? I am afraid not everybody can do it that often.
What do you do to sell your artwork? What are the big things that you work?
Well, I actually have been doing less of that, unfortunately, because it's really difficult to balance these 2 things together. But I use internet, and internet has been my wonderful agent.
I mean, I know you're on Art Specifier, which is how I kind of connected with you.
Yes, right.
And I'm looking forward to maybe helping you to promote your work a little bit on that and get some sales for you. I know we've done a few things together, but obviously there's always more to be done.
I have a list of collectors and a list of friends and buyers and people who maybe can't afford my art but always love to see it. So I just do self-promotion. Periodically, I try to have about 2 or 3 shows a year.
Where are you showing now?
Well, I'm still with a gallery in Minneapolis, actually, that's called Gallery 360. And since I moved to Boston, so far I was unable to find a dealer. Meredith Moses, with whom I worked before I left Boston, as you know, retired, and she
Right.
retired a long time ago. And I kind of lost touch with Clark in around 2004. And since by then I was living in Minneapolis, I kind of lost my touch with Clark. But I am looking for galleries to show my work in Boston, and I see only 2 to consider, and I will just keep thinking about it. And
Why
I
would
will
you
keep
only consider 2? You think your work is suited for those
Yeah,
more than
yeah,
others?
absolutely. Yeah, because I do what I do. I'm a modern painter. I work in my own style or styles, and I have absolutely my own idea what to do, but I'm not a realist. I don't follow any specific path, which makes it more difficult for me to find a gallery and for gallery to find me. I just went to the Armory show, and every time I will love the gallery, and I will think, oh my God, I found the gallery. This gallery will be either from Europe, or from Eastern Europe, or from Russia, or it will be an outsider art gallery. So I think I should figure out some better way to find the gallery if I want to, but I think internet has been great. I was able to have one big show a year since I moved back to Boston. The shows were in culture centers. In French Culture Center, I had a great show about French surrealist poetry. And I had this transplanted show in Multicultural Center in Cambridge just last year. And they were both pretty big shows. So I don't have a next show planned, and I don't like it. I really need a deadline. But I think I'll set up my next deadline for the end of September, and I'll just have my own open studio.
Going back to Art Specifier for a
Yep.
minute, if we were to install some webinars or seminars or any kind of lecture series, is there anything that comes to your mind that would be helpful for you as an artist?
Will it be about marketing or about art in general?
We're trying to determine what the artists would really like to have.
I think artists would love to find other people around them.
Well, we
And
try
that's
to
what you
stress
do.
the community,
I
of
think
course.
this is a very important thing. And I think that when you find more people, then each artist probably has his or her own thing to present to them. And that will each artist then will lead to a separate topic maybe.
So community is really an important issue for artists.
Community is a very important issue. I think as a Russian artist in the community who by Russians is not considered Russian, I think it's very important to invite more people into this community. I don't know how many people know about it. I think that's a very important thing. And I think that it should have all kinds of issues. It's a difficult question.
Like a dialogue.
Yes, it needs a
Conversation.
dialogue with artists by very different people.
So diverse opinions, diverse thoughts.
Yes, very much so.
Alexandra, tell me a little bit about what your current work is dealing with.
I think I always do more than one thing. Right now, I'm actually reworking a series of paintings which I painted a few months ago, which is about location in an empty space and taking this space and putting it on a stage and changing the script, basically. So I'm sure it's a little bit about my life. It has all these symbols like chairs and tables and oranges. So right now I'm working on the structural paintings which have recognizable images in them, but also are happening in an open space.
What are some of the names of those paintings?
I don't really know yet.
Oh, you're not there yet.
I don't have it. I have names of paintings that maybe I'm changing, but I don't have names for these paintings that I probably end up with.
For example, this difficult decision. I have a picture
You
of
know
this
why it's called
here.
difficult decision? Because it was such a difficult decision to give it a title, I decided to call it difficult decision.
Is that true?
It's absolutely true.
What was
I
it
really
about?
like this painting. It's one of these paintings where I worked with paint a lot, and I actually made a painting which was very abstract and very good, and I knew that if somebody like you will see it, you'll just tell me to stop. But I don't like doing that. So I kept working, and I came up with this image of this beautiful blue horse, which I know comes to my work from Russian fairy tales and this beautiful movie by Arseny Tarkovsky that's called Ivan's Childhood, where there are all these apples and oranges falling out of the moving truck. Although it's a black and white movie, so you don't know that horse is blue, but I know. So the horse happened to be blue, and then it happened to have all this old wooden stuff attached to it. I think this is just all my symbols.
I love that painting.
And I'm very happy with this painting altogether, because I think it's a good combination of my painting and my drawing, which is something that I have been struggling with for a while, and I really want to succeed in that.
Well, we actually talked briefly about that in the car when we were driving
Right.
here.
Yes.
And I thought that the drawings were amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank
And you addressed the issue that you'd like to work on those a little bit more.
Yes.
I think you should. They're fabulous.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
definitely am going to show our audience some of those
Thank you.
drawings because I
Well, that's
thought
my
they were,
summer project. One of my summer projects is just to work only on my drawings and just move all the paint out of my studio, because I know.
You're not capable of doing
I
that.
can-
You're in
yeah.
love with your paint.
Yeah. So it's like eating chocolate. It's like really hard. So
Tell me about Always Knock First.
Always Knock First. That's a pretty old painting. It's, I think, 2008. This is the painting that I painted when my life was going through some turmoil. Doesn't happen that often, maybe every 6, 7, 8 years. I needed to change my life. And I was painting different situations, or places rather, that maybe I wouldn't mind to go to.
Ah.
And a lot of this half landscapes, I would say, would be happening on the water, because I think water and ice and snow are more unstable than the land. So they would be my locations in these landscapes. So this painting, this particular painting, is a flooded cathedral, specific Italian cathedral which has been flooded, and I moved a little city into it, partially stealing an image from Arseny Tarkovsky's Nostalgia, but not exactly. I think he has
Appropriating is what we call it.
yeah, sure. But that's what Russians call it anyway. In his beautiful movie, there is a whole village inside the cathedral. So just that idea of one place inside another place, and there are many other books and of course movies where you can find this, but it's something very dear to me, and I did it more than once. But this is what's happening in this painting, and you can see that there is inside and outside all over the painting. You kind of sometimes don't know if you're inside or outside. And then there is a boat, and the boat used to be one of my favorite images, because I guess
It transports you to different places.
It transports you from one place to another place.
Would you please finish this sentence? Art is.
Art is wonderful. And I think it should be wonderful for many people. And I think that the work of an artist, or at least one of them, is to deliver everything good through art. And I know that there is a lot of other ways to approach art, but I grew up in a communist society, and I really think that we need beauty and kindness and trust, and it all can be found through art.
Thank you so much.
You're
It was a
welcome.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My pleasure.